Caitlin Clark wasn't just another rookie entering the WNBA. She was the lightning bolt the league had been waiting for, the spark that ignited arenas that once sat half empty. Before her arrival, the WNBA was bleeding financially, struggling to capture the nation's attention despite decades of effort. But with one draft pick, everything changed. Suddenly, this league, once written off by many, had a new face, a new energy, and a new savior. Yet, with that salvation came a dangerous dependency. The question haunting fans and insiders alike was chilling. Had the WNBA placed all its survival on one young star? From the very beginning, Clark shattered every expectation. She didn't just play, she rewrote the record books. Most points by a rookie, most assists by a rookie, the most double-doubles ever recorded by a guard in her first year. These weren't small achievements. These were groundbreaking firsts that even seasoned veterans had never reached. With every three-point shot from the logo, with every impossible pass threading through defenders, Clark wasn't just a player anymore. She was a phenomenon. And with that phenomenon came a surge of money, ratings, and controversy the league had never experienced before. The league offices, once quiet halls of missed opportunities and unanswered calls, suddenly roared with new life. Clark was everywhere. Highlights on social media, primetime games on national television, sold-out arenas coast to coast. But behind closed doors, the whispers grew louder. Executives weren't just celebrating Clark's arrival. They were plotting. Reports began to surface that league insiders were preparing for something bigger, something orchestrated. A storyline was being laid out in hushed tones. Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, set to rise all the way to the 2025 finals. And to skeptics, it reeked of manipulation. The numbers alone tell the story of her unmatched impact. Before Clark, Indiana's home games barely pulled in 4,200 fans, often the lowest in the league. After Clark, the average exploded to 17,000 per night, 4 times the attendance. Tickets that once collected dust were now being scalped for hundreds of dollars. And it didn't stop there. The WNBA as a whole saw ticket sales rise by 93% in 2024. Teams were forced to move their games to larger arenas just to meet demand. Clark had turned empty seats into gold mines overnight. But it wasn't just about the packed arenas. Television executives couldn't believe what they were seeing. Caitlin's debut game pulled in 2.2 million viewers, the most watched WNBA game in over 2 decades. Suddenly, ESPN, ABC, and streaming platforms were clamoring for more. Nielsen reported a 170% increase in ESPN's WNBA ratings, while other networks saw a 133% rise. Then came the real bombshell. Her presence helped secure a $2.2 billion media deal, negotiated alongside the NBA's rights package. Billions, all tied to one rookie. The WNBA had struck oil, but it was oil buried under one fragile foundation. The Fever's playoff run only solidified the phenomenon. 4-2 games, Clark carried Indiana into must-watch television, drawing an average of 2.5 million viewers. That's the kind of number reserved for NBA finals, not WNBA quarterfinals. But then, just as quickly as the storm arrived, it was gone. Indiana was eliminated, and Clark was out. The impact was immediate and devastating. Attendance plummeted. Playoff games without her barely pulled in 929,000 viewers, a drop of over 60%. Overnight, the league's golden ticket had been ripped away, leaving executives staring at half-empty arenas and falling ratings. The collapse sparked something more dangerous than low numbers: suspicion. If Clark was the only thing keeping the WNBA afloat, how far would the league go to keep her relevant? Rumors began swirling of referees being pressured, schedules being manipulated, and matchups being arranged to maximize Clark's exposure. Sports media personalities like Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless fueled the fire, openly questioning whether the league could risk another early elimination. If Clark went down, did the WNBA go down with her? The whispers became louder. Was the game itself being bent to protect its brightest star? For longtime WNBA fans, it was a nightmare scenario. They had fought for years to elevate women's basketball, demanding respect for players like Aya Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu. But suddenly, all attention, all advertising, all primetime slots revolve around Caitlin Clark. Was it fair? Was it honest? To her supporters, Clark was a generational talent who deserved every ounce of spotlight. To her detractors, she was a symbol of dangerous imbalance, a league willing to sacrifice fairness and history to worship at the altar of a rookie. And that resentment was only growing louder. Clark herself wasn't immune to the pressure. On the court, she endured brutal defense, elbows, shoves, and constant targeting by opponents who knew stopping her meant crippling the league's darling. Frustrated, she admitted publicly that officiating felt inconsistent, claiming opponents got away with things that others wouldn't. Fans saw their golden ticket under attack, while critics claimed she was being coddled. The reality was darker. The WNBA's entire financial survival was riding on her shoulders, and everyone, from coaches to referees, knew it. Every foul, every missed call, every injury scare sent shockwaves through the entire sport. By the time her rookie season closed, one fact was undeniable. Caitlin Clark had gone beyond basketball. She wasn't just a player anymore. She was a story, the marketing machine, the financial engine. She was Gatorade commercials, primetime highlight reels, and front-page coverage. She was a girl from Iowa who dreamed big, and now her dream had become the WNBA's lifeline. But dreams come at a cost, and as whispers of favoritism and conspiracy spread, the line between inspiration and exploitation blurred. The question loomed larger than ever. Had the league crossed a point of no return? Executives argued that every sports league promotes its stars. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tom Brady, they all carried leagues to new heights. But here, the stakes felt different. The WNBA wasn't just promoting Clark, it was depending on her to survive. Every dip in attendance without her, every ratings collapse after her elimination, painted a chilling picture. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA wasn't just weaker, it was vulnerable, fragile, breakable. And so, fans began to wonder, would the league manipulate games, push referees, or shape narratives to guarantee their golden ticket reach the finals? The paranoia spread quickly. This paranoia wasn't unfounded. Across sports history, allegations of favoritism have haunted leagues. The NBA once faced accusations of fixing playoff outcomes to favor larger markets. The NFL has been accused of pushing marquee teams into prime-time slots at the expense of fairness. Could the WNBA resist the same temptation? With billions of dollars in national attention at stake, skeptics doubted it. The conspiracy wasn't about whether Clark deserved success. She undeniably did. It was about whether her success would be manufactured. And if so, what would that mean for the league's reputation, its integrity, and its future? For every highlight Clark delivered, for every buzzer beater that electrified fans, the undercurrent of fear grew darker. The WNBA had found its star, but at what cost? If the league bent too far, it risked alienating its most loyal fans, the ones who had supported it long before Clark arrived. If it didn't and Clark was eliminated early again, it risked losing the casual audience entirely. It was a no-win scenario, a ticking time bomb. And in the middle of it all stood Caitlin Clark herself, both the league's savior and its most dangerous gamble. Each passing game only deepened the drama. Networks broadcast her every move. Social media dissected her every highlight, and merchandise sales soared to record-breaking levels. But the league's over-reliance was becoming glaringly obvious. Other stars, no matter how talented, were overshadowed. Fans who came for Clark often left when she was gone. The WNBA's growth wasn't sustainable. It was tethered to a single player's success. And that's what made the promise whisper behind closed doors so chilling. Could it be true? Was the league already preparing the path for Caitlin Clark to reach the 2025 finals? No matter the cost, the players themselves weren't blind to the whispers. Behind locker room doors, resentment simmered. Veterans who had given their lives to the league questioned why one rookie received all the spotlight, all the promotion, all the love. Some admired her, others seethed, but they all understood the stakes. With billions on the line, Clark wasn't just a teammate or an opponent. She was the WNBA's lifeline. And if the league really was preparing to tilt the scales in her favor, then every player had to ask themselves one terrifying question. Were they competing in basketball or in a scripted show? For Clark's fans, none of that mattered. To them, she was a reason they tuned in, the reason they bought tickets, the reason they believed in the WNBA for the first time. Every game felt like a revolution. Every shot felt like history being made. They didn't care if the league bent the rules. They just wanted to see their hero shine. And for the league, that devotion was intoxicating. But for critics, it was dangerous. Because once fans believe a league is scripted, Once they sense the outcomes are manufactured, the illusion of fairness shatters, and trust never returns. Even as Clark herself insisted she wanted to earn every victory, not be handed one, the whispers didn't stop. Analysts pointed out favorable schedules, questionable officiating, and suspiciously well-timed narratives in league marketing. Could it all be coincidence? Maybe, but in the world of professional sports, coincidences rarely satisfy doubters. With Clark's impact so immense, skeptics believed the league simply couldn't afford another season where she bowed out early. And if it meant risking the integrity of the sport to keep her in the spotlight, some feared the WNBA would be willing to take that risk. The league had reached a crossroads. On one side stood authenticity, fairness, and the trust of its loyal fan base. On the other side stood billions in revenue, record-breaking ratings, and the golden glow of Caitlin Clark. Choosing between them wasn't simple, it was brutal, and every sign pointed to one terrifying conclusion. The league might already have made its choice. Behind the glittering numbers and inspiring storylines, a darker reality lurked. The WNBA wasn't just riding Clark's wave, it was building its survival plan on her shoulders. And that plan could either save the league or destroy forever. Because what happens if Clark falters? What if injury strikes or opponents successfully shut her down, or her team simply isn't strong enough? Does the WNBA collapse under the weight of its own gamble? Or does it intervene, subtly or overtly, to keep her at the forefront? That's the scandalous question haunting every fan, every player, every commentator. Caitlin Clark has become bigger than the game, but the league's dependence on her is a dangerous addiction. And addictions, no matter how thrilling, eventually come with consequences. For the WNBA, those consequences could change everything. And so, the story of Caitlin Clark continues. A story of brilliance, controversy, and whispers of manipulation. She is the WNBA's hero, its lifeline, and perhaps its undoing. Every step she takes toward the 2025 season is being watched, analyzed, and debated. Will the league resist temptation, or will it bend under the pressure of billions in revenue and millions of eyes? Fans wait, skeptics whisper, and critics warn. But one truth is undeniable. The fate of the WNBA no longer belongs to the league itself. It belongs to Caitlin Clark and the storm she has unleashed. But as the league leans further into this Caitlin Clark phenomenon, a dangerous tension brews beneath the surface. Other players, many of them legends in their own right, feel the sting of being overshadowed. Aya Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, names that once defined the WNBA conversation, now orbit around Clark's meteoric rise. They see their contributions minimized, their highlight reels buried under an avalanche of Clark-centric promotions, and quietly resentment builds. What happens when the very athletes who carry the league on their backs begin to believe they're competing not just against Clark, but against the league's own favoritism? Fans, too, are conflicted. On one hand, Clark has delivered a surge of attention that women's basketball has long deserved. But on the other, some fear the integrity of the game is slipping away. They don't want to see a league so obsessed with keeping one player at the forefront that it forgets the collective power of its stars. When playoff games without Clark drop into irrelevance, it confirmed the nightmare scenario. Had the WNBA built an empire that could only stand if one rookie was at its foundation? The cracks in the facade were already beginning to show. The media circus feeding this frenzy only adds fuel to the fire. Every headline, every viral clip, every debate segment revolves around Caitlin Clark. Sports talk shows treat her like the sole protagonist of a league filled with talent. The narrative is intoxicating for casual fans, but corrosive for the sport's balance. Even when Clark's team struggles, the storyline is reframed to keep her in the spotlight. Instead of asking how the Fever can improve, analysts speculate on how the WNBA might need Clark in the finals. And slowly, conspiracy theories transform from whispers into widespread belief. Insiders close to the league insist nothing shady is happening, that Clark's rise is natural, earned, and deserved. But skeptics point to history, citing scandals across professional sports where money and ratings influence decisions. The fear isn't whether Clark is good enough. She absolutely is. The fear is whether the league's desperation for survival will push it to cross ethical lines. If referees start giving Clark favorable calls, if playoff matchups feel suspiciously favorable, fans will notice. And once that perception takes root, it could be catastrophic. Because in sports, nothing is more sacred than trust in the game. Meanwhile, Clark herself walks a tightrope she never asked for. She has always been fiercely competitive, priding herself on outworking everyone around her. To even hint that her success might be manufactured threatens her identity as much as her legacy. The weight of carrying an entire league on her shoulders isn't just physical, it's psychological. Every word she speaks, every foul she draws, every shot she takes is magnified 1,000 times. Deep down, she must wonder, will people remember her as a generational player or as a symbol of the league accused of bending its own rules? The storm grows louder as the 2025 season approaches. Fans demand answers. Critics demand transparency. And the league stands at a precipice, forced to choose between chasing billions through Clark effect or building a sustainable future where stars share the spotlight. The problem is, the math doesn't lie. Without Clark, the numbers collapse. Empty seats return. Viewership nosedives. Sponsorships dry up. The temptation to lean even harder on her success is overwhelming. But temptation comes at a cost. And once the line is crossed, there is no going back. The WNBA's reputation may never recover. And so, the story unfolds like a ticking clock. Caitlin Clark is more than a player now. She's a living gamble. Every dribble, every game, every playoff appearance is entwined with the league's fate. Can one young woman carry the weight of an entire sport without the system breaking under her? Or will the league's desperation to keep her on top ignite the very scandal that destroys its integrity forever? The 2025 season isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about survival. And survival, as the WNBA is learning, comes with a price that may be too steep to pay.